Introduction to the Escape of Azeroth in League of Legends. 4 years ago, Lynn traveled to the Rune Continent and with the help of the system, successfully transitioned to become a Paladin, changing the fate of many heroes. Now, standing in front of the Dark Gate, behind Lynn are raging demons and void monsters. The Rune Land is about to be destroyed, and he must lead the survivors of Valoran across the dark portal to reach. Chapter 1. Hellfire. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Burning Legion has arrived. This idea suddenly arose when Lynn saw something falling from the sky. For a moment, the traveler felt very absurd about his idea. He was currently in Valdez, a border city in Texas. Noxus, Demacia, Piltwave. These countries, big and small, are clearly part of the magical continent of Valoran and the center of runes. This world is part of the League of Legends, as known to the Crosser, while the Burning Legion belongs to the neighboring World of Warcraft set. The appearance of the Burning Legion in the world of Valoran is like going into a bar in a previous life and asking the boss for something to eat. 2 minutes later, a plate of steaming egg-fried rice comes up. The raw material is still the fresh rice cooked that day, so that the rice and the egg paste are mixed together and completely condensed into a yellow unknown mixture that no one can distinguish. However, the subsequent events actually confirmed the traveler's absurd conjecture. Under the gaze of Lynn Radiant Night, a huge green meteorite crashed to the ground, creating a deep crater on the plain. Then, several cracks appeared on the uneven meteorite, and a pair of huge hands, feet, and an equally large green head popped out of the cracks, transforming the original meteorite into a body. These dark green giant rock blocks are completely linked by eerie green flames, without any neck, knee, or other parts, making people doubt whether they really have the ability to move. It's moving. From stumbling to shooting stars with great strides, the monster adapted to the earth beneath its feet ran towards Lynn. Wherever it steps, the grass and trees wither. These lively little creatures can grow both in the fields of farmers and in the tombs of kings. Despite being trampled countless times, he still stands proudly, but now he is withered and withered, obviously burned down by the fire of evil energy. Lynn raised the weapon in his hand. This is a large sword called Ashkandi Brotherhood Sword. The blade of this large sword is as red as fire, and a ferocious dragon hovers around the guard. Valorans who have seen Ashkandi know that it is the symbol of the Radiant Night. This great sword once followed its owner and was active in the vast plains of Ionia, the residential areas of Piltwave and Zwan, and the battlefields of Demacia and Noxus. In just 4 years, this sword and its owner's reputation spread throughout the entire continent of Valoran. But no one knows that this sword actually doesn't belong to this world. It belongs to another world, a world called Azeroth. The monster is getting closer and faster, and the buzzing sound from its body is almost shattering a person's eardrums. Lin N took a deep breath and injected the power of the holy light into the big sword in his hand. Ashkandi's fiery red color became even more dazzling, with a divine power converging on the runes of the sword, and a faint golden light flowing on this large sword. The monster was getting closer and closer to Lynn, and its stone arm wrapped in a deadly force hit Lynn. If this blow hit, Lynn's journey through time would come to an end. Lynn certainly wouldn't foolishly stand in place and be smashed. Hellfire is faster, his speed is faster. A flash, jump behind the monster. When it punches down, the large sword in its hand cuts directly into the junction between the stone legs and the body. The holy light touches the evil energy, like a hot knife cutting through butter, instantly cutting off its connection with the entire body. The Hellfire, which had lost one leg, quickly fell to the ground and struggled to get up due to the inability to control balance. Lynn pursued the monster with his victorious sword straight into its back, and the vigorous power of the holy light poured out. The giant only had time to let out a mournful cry and was defeated in the battle with the holy light. Without the maintenance of the fire of evil, the Hellfire can no longer maintain its original form, and its entire body cracks open, breaking into piles of dark gray stones of all sizes. Seeing the flames of evil energy completely extinguished, Lynn finally breathed a sigh of relief. He was somewhat grateful for the judgment made after crossing over. The Paladin indeed had a better future than the warrior. If it weren't for the restraining effect of the holy light on the evil energy, relying solely on Lynn's current strength at the level of a strong one would require a lot of effort to counter this evil energy creation. Even if it is just the lowest level existence in the Burning Legion. How Lynn became a Paladin starts from 4 years ago. 4 years ago, he traveled to the land of runes. After struggling through the first week of wilderness survival, the system of the traveler was activated. The system is very simple and its full name is Plot Reversal System. As the name suggests, it does not mean that Lynn has completed a system mission when he changes the original plot of the Valoran world. After the twist of each plot node ends, the system will obtain huge energy from it, and Lynn will receive a generous reward. These rewards are all props from the game World of Warcraft Next Door, which features glass shards. 5%, 10%, 20%. The increase in the degree of plot twist signifies a greater change in the world of Valoran, and more importantly, a closer connection between Lynn and the continent of Valoran. The only regret for Lynn is that most of the mission rewards are consumables in the category of props. Therefore, in Valoran's adventure journey, all the mission rewards were consumed completely. Except for the Ashkandi Brotherhood Sword in Hand, Finding the Book Garden www.zhaozuiyuan.com and Lynn's chosen profession. Paladin. During the first reward distribution in the system, Lynn fell into a dilemma of choice. Because novice rewards are career choices. The system provides all the professions that existed in the Warcraft game before Lynn crossing. Whether it's War Hunter Saw, Thief Fada, Equestrian Pastor, or Death Knight Monk Demon Hunter, they are all heroic professions that stand firm in the sky, and their representative figures are all the top combat forces of Azeroth's massive killing of all directions. Later, after several hours of careful consideration, Lynn first ruled out the abilities of Death Knight, Warlock, and Demon Hunter. Death, evil energy, and void side, which could easily cause panic in a human-dominated order world and become a global enemy. Next, Lynn successively eliminated druids, hunters, thieves, and shamans. In the end, among the indomitable warriors, intelligent and wise mages, graceful and chivalrous monks, life-saving priests, and shining paladins, Lynn ultimately chose the paladin known as the Movie Emperor. Compared to priests, although paladins may be slightly inferior in healing spells, their combat abilities have greatly increased. More importantly, Lynn's account before his time traveling was the human paladin. This can also be considered a familiar road. Can it really be the Burning Legion? Smelling the faint smell of sulfur in the air, Lynn couldn't help but frown. That's right, even crossing time can happen to oneself, what else is impossible? However, I hope it's some sorcerer's clumsy summoning technique. Spell failure and summoning demons sound more reasonable than the arrival of the Burning Legion. Lynn thought silently. From afar, a group of cavalry rushed towards Lynn's location. Chapter 2. Galen, Lacus, and the Radiant Knight. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The cavalry quickly arrived in front of Lynn, led by a knight carrying a golden broadsword. He was not wearing a helmet, wearing a bright silver armor lined with a blue robe. His year-round military career did not leave any traces of time on his face. According to Demasia's tradition of serving at the age of 16, he has been in the military for over 10 years. If it weren't for the twisted muscles on his body betraying him, he would definitely be regarded as some gilded Demasian nobleman. As the heir of the Crown Guard family, Galen Crown Guard, like the Crown Guards of all dynasties, has always adhered to his duties and devoted his loyalty to the Jiawen royal family. As a reward for loyalty, the Crown Guard family became the first aristocrat in Demacia, second only to the royal Light Shield. Today is the day when Demacia and Texas signed a peace treaty. After receiving orders from the messenger of King Jiawen III, Galen led the delegation and arrived at the border city of Valdis yesterday evening without stopping. The enmity between Demacia and Noxus has a long history. Since several hundred years ago, when King Gavin I was brutally invaded by the barbarians of Texas and his neck was twisted, this deep-seated blood feud has been lingering between the two countries. For hundreds of years, Germany and Norway have engaged in many wars. The border city of Valdis, like the silk used as a symbol during the tug of war, has been changed hands multiple times. 2 years ago, the last emperor of Texas, Dacville, was killed in a coup, and the blood feud between the Gavin royal family and the Dacville family came to an end. So, some nobles, including his sister Lacus, believed that the dawn of peace between Demacia and Noxus was about to come. Driven by the aristocrats who were tired of war on both sides, a non-aggression treaty emerged. And it will be officially established today in the city of Valdis. Although Galen is not optimistic about this treaty, as Lynn jokingly said, the non-aggression treaty is meant to be torn up. But Galen gladly accepted the job. After all, peace is always more difficult than war. Galen's original plan was to go directly to the town center of Valdis to meet his old rival. But the sudden appearance of a vision changed Galen's mind. He wants to know about any new things that appear in Texas. So he galloped towards the direction where the monster appeared. To Galen's surprise, the monster did not see it, he only saw the ground covered in rubble. Is this the Norxen's downfall? Galen dismounted and asked, pointing to the pile of gravel on the ground. I'm afraid it's much worse. Lynn shook his head at the words and withdrew his large sword from its scabbard. I don't think Noxus would casually reveal his cards, just give us a chance, he said, it's possible. Galen felt that Lynn's words made a lot of sense, and the Nox people were indeed a group of cunning guys. But they are not stupid. What do you think it is? Galen asked the young man. This person who claims to come from an ancient village in Ionia doesn't seem like any farmer he has ever seen. He has a handsome appearance, and his every move is full of composure. Especially his eyes, which were neither big nor small, always flickered with wisdom unconsciously. Galen suspected that his father or grandfather was from a declining royal family and hid under his name in Ionia to avoid pursuit. Time has passed, and when the wind has passed, he has been sent out again to revitalize his family. Perhaps a certain mage's summoning technique did not reach home, so he summoned a monster over. Lynn concealed his other speculation from Galen. How can he explain the existence of the Burning Legion to Galen? In the boundless universe, the fallen titan Sargeras launched a grand expedition with the aim of destroying all worlds. Galen will definitely treat him as a madman. Lynn looked up at the sky, the original morning sun disappearing at some point, leaving only gloomy black clouds. Occasionally, green meteors streak across the sky. Strange, why did it get dark so quickly this day? Galen also noticed the changes in the sky, flicked his horse's head, and said to Lynn, hurry up, it's going to rain soon. Lynn replied. Before taking a few steps, a girl wearing a blue battle dress greeted her. She has an extremely delicate face, delicate skin like grease, a pair of clear eyes like a stream of water, and a head of golden curly hair that reaches her shoulders, resembling an angel in a painting. As soon as she saw Lynn, the girl quickly walked up and asked with concern, Lynn, are you not injured? Although Galen arrived on the battlefield at the speed of his horse, Lacus was the one who left the city earlier. She originally intended to tell Lynn some important news, but accidentally saw the entire battle process. Don't worry, Lace, not a single strand of hair has been injured. Lynn flicked his hair in a foul manner, indicating that the battle was easy. I only know how to show off. Seeing the familiar movements, Lace couldn't help but squint her eyes happily, and the corner of her mouth also slightly raised. She couldn't help but think of the time they spent in the town of Forsborough, trust, and some other emotions that slowly fermented during that time. Lacus, I won't let you die. In the name of the holy light. Carrying the boy on his back, Lacus, who was unconscious, only heard this sentence and deeply imprinted it in her mind. Are you in such a hurry to find me? What's up? Seeing Lace suddenly falling into memories and not speaking for a long time, Lynn patted her shoulder and asked the bookstore www.zhaozuiyuan.com. Oh, it's like this. Realizing her loss of composure, Lace blushed slightly and then excitedly said. When you return to Demacia this time, your Majesty will appoint you as a baron. Of course, you don't have to question me, this news is absolutely true. I'm a secret channel. Lacus boasted. Now, even the most rigid Aunt Tiana won't stop us. Of course, the girl did not speak this sentence, but secretly hid it in her heart. In the highly hierarchical Demacia, there is a huge gap between commoners and nobles. Although there are occasional commoners who cross social classes and unite with nobles, at the level of the Crown Guard family, the union with commoners is seen as a disgrace to the family, and naturally, one can never receive blessings from the family. For this reason, many members of the family constrain the frequent contact between Lacus and Lynn, led by Tiana Crown Guard, Galen, and Lacus's biological aunt. Lacus could vaguely guess their thoughts. In order to maintain the status of the Mianwei family, the princess of the Mianwei family should marry the only son of the Jiawen family, Jiawen IV. But I don't want to. Lacus thought to herself that my brother would support me, and Lynn had told me that His Highness Jiawen had already found a place to belong. She is the life-saving benefactor of His Highness Jiawen. That would be great. Hello. My dear sister. How come you only care about Lynn and don't even care about your own brother? Before Lynn could finish speaking, Galen ran back on horseback at some point. He looked angry and said, "You haven't married yet." Chapter 3. The Burning Legion is about to invade. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Alright, Galen. You're not a child anymore. Upon hearing Galen's words, Lacus couldn't help but curl her lips. It is obvious that my brother is jealous of Lynn. You are now the general of Demacia and should set an example for the soldiers. If they see you like this, as my aunt often says, the face of the Crown Guard family will be ruined. Upon hearing his sister pressing his aunt down on him, Galen grabbed the mane from his horse's back and muttered something. Who stipulates that once you become a general, you cannot be angry. You are my own sister, but instead, you are facing outsiders. Seeing Galen muttering softly, Lynn patted his head and deliberately said. I heard that Katarina has also arrived in Valdez City now, maybe she is a member of the negotiation team. Galen, you must guard your bottom line and not be fooled by the beauty scheme of Texas. How could it be? Katarina is an internal affairs officer, how could she participate in external affairs? Galen didn't even think about it and directly spoke up to refute. Halfway through, I realized that I had fallen into Lynn's language trap. He furrowed his brow and angrily said, You're really not honest, are you deceiving me? Katrina is the eldest daughter of the legendary general of Texas, Dukiko, and also the notorious Texas assassin. Why do they know their secrets when they have never seen or heard of Catalina? Lynn ignored Galen's raging anger and turned his head to say to Lacus. See, Lacus. As I said, your brother is not a calm person either. TSK, a noble general from Demacia who fell in love with the daughter of General Noxus. It's really dog blood. Lynn spoke sarcastically to himself. He actually hopes that these two people can become a pair, after all, they were one of the official matches in their past lives. Moreover, this should also be considered as a distortion of the timeline. If he can facilitate this relationship, the next system reward will not be far away. Of course, the most important thing is that the marriage between the two high-ranking nobles of Noxus and Demacia may bring a long period of peace to the two hostile countries. Lynn, from childhood to adulthood, lived in a peaceful country in his past life. War is often only used as a topic of casual conversation among friends. It was not until he traveled through the dangerous Rune Continent and experienced several wars that he became more aware of the value of peace. Really, brother? Lacus widened her eyes and looked at Galen in surprise. Don't listen to that kid Lynn and talk nonsense. Galen's face showed a rare hint of blush, which passed in a blink of an eye. He immediately said solemnly, I am a soldier of Demacia, how could I fall in love with a Norxan? Alright, Galen, don't argue anymore. I just watched her walk out of your big tent. Lynn continued to stir the water, and he did see someone walking out of Galen's tent that day. However, it's just a black silhouette. Tell me honestly. Oh, I'm going to have a sister.in.law now, that's really great. After Lynn finished speaking, Lacus clapped her hands and coaxed, Galen and Carter are together. Galen couldn't help but laugh and cry, shrugged and said, I said she came to assassinate me, do you believe me? Galen can swear that the fiery red short-haired woman is here to assassinate herself. However, there was a misunderstanding while inside the convertible, that's all. He and Carter are just pure enemies. Believe it, how could you not believe it? Lynn N was sarcastically sarcastic, completely imitating the tone of his past life. Ah! What kind of monster is this? Galen was about to continue refuting Lynn when Lacroix's exclamation of surprise came in his ear. He fixed his gaze and saw two dog-like monsters running towards him. Compared to ordinary wild dogs, their body size is several times larger. The heads of these two monsters resemble a strange mixture of wolves and lizards, with a pair of curved horns extending from behind and covered in a layer of red scales. They opened their bloody mouths, revealing their sharp long teeth. Damn the Norxans, they must be the ones who caused it. Since this morning, he has felt something is wrong. Now, these premonitions have indeed come true. What exactly is the conspiracy of the Noxus people? Galen began to doubt the sincerity of Noxus in this meeting. But the top priority is to solve these monsters. Galen dismounted and rode the Stormwind sword forward. Even when Lacus screamed, Lynn had already discovered these two hellhounds. It seems that the mage not only summoned a Hellfire, but also brought out a hellhound. Did he find a long-circulated demon summoning book? Lynn drew his sword, dodged the canines of the hellhound, and then struck its back with a sword. Green blood flowed out of its wound. The hellhound felt pain and let out a howl before charging fiercely towards Lynn. Lynn's big sword struck again, cutting off one of its legs. Continuously wielding a sword, quickly slaying it. He looked up and saw that Galen had already dealt with the other hellhound. Sure enough, it's still far from the level of hero. Lynn sighed in his heart. Although the holy light can restrain demons, Lynn is still unable to easily kill a demon like Galen. After seeing many of Valoran's strongmen, Lynn also roughly graded the strength of the heroes. The first step, of course, is for ordinary people, who make up the vast majority of the population in Valoran. The second ladder is the strongest among humans, such as myself now, the Asoyan brothers in Ionia, and the slightly stronger Vastaeans like Surti. On the third ladder, Lynn referred to it as a hero, such as the reclusive Master E, Galen wielding the Stormwind sword, and Texas Marshal Drius wielding the Black Splitter. The former's original strength far exceeds that of the strong, while the latter too, although hovering at the level of heroes, have epic weapons in their hands that take their strength to the next level. The fourth staircase is already a legendary existence, and Lynn referred to it as a demigod. Including the brothers Orn and Walleibel in the Legend of Frederick, several ascending beings of Shurima, and the once acquainted Master Kieran, no one knows their true strength, and perhaps there may be a huge disparity in strength among the same level. Lynn N only roughly divided them according to his own understanding when looking for the book garden www.zhaozuiyuan.com. Going further up, Lynn never even saw it. For example, the legendary Star Spirit, Lynn traveled so long that he couldn't see a single one. The Valoran shield in the game is now just an ordinary officer named Tariq. Perhaps, for noble beings like Star Spirit, it is like the Star Saint created by the natives in the neighboring world of Warcraft. Their own responsibility is to manage countless planets. The Land of Runes is just a small and insignificant world in the universe. barely qualified to make them startle and drop some miracles. Thinking of this, Lynn couldn't help but curse in his heart. He is certain that the system he owns is definitely a semi-finished product. Because all the panels of the system are very simple. This can also explain why after changing jobs, the system did not reward any paladin skills. Therefore, Lynn's strength was stuck at the level of the strong, unable to rise or fall. Damn the Norxans, let's go. Let's go into the city and ask them what they're up to. Galen was furious, tied up the body of a hellhound, dragged it behind a horse, and rode away. Lynn and Lacus exchanged a glance and walked into the city of Valdis together. Before taking 2 steps, for the first time, the system took the initiative to issue a warning. Lynn's heart tightened as fear choked his throat, making him speechless. Warning. The Burning Legion will officially invade in 3 days, all the luck has disappeared at this moment. The Burning Legion is here. The demon army that destroyed countless planets is about to invade Valoran. Chapter 4. Ruiz's Warning. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. In the city of Valdis, Galen rushed into the town hall with great momentum, disregarding the obstruction of the Nox's soldiers. Lynn and Lacus followed closely behind. With a loud bang, Galen slammed the body of the hellhound in his hand onto the conference table in front of him and angrily rebuked, "Tell me, what are you Norxans up to?" If he were the only one in the negotiation team this time, Galen wouldn't be so angry. But even the Norxans wanted to conspire against their own sister, and Galen couldn't tolerate it. "Calm down, Galen." A deep voice rang out, and across from Galen was a man in heavy armor. A slender scar pierced through his left eye, with a blood-red cloak on his back that moved automatically without wind. Are the generals of Demacia so reckless? Delius looked at Lynn and the other 2 who had just entered the door and raised his hand to greet them. "You came at the right time. Please sit down, Miss Lakshina, and you, Knight Lynn." Lynn, as early as the first conquest of Ionia by Texas, Drius had seen this name in the battle reports of the Navali 3rd Legion. At first, it was an inconspicuous little fight and then it became a significant obstacle on the military path. Until Presidian, the entire war situation suddenly turned around. The Third Army retreated step by step, and at one point retreated to Wary, which was the starting point for the landing of the Third Army. However, Delius did not hold a grudge against him for this. At the beginning of the war, Drius was dissatisfied with Darkwell's foolish behavior. The act of a tyrant launching a war is purely for personal gain, disregarding the lives of the Noxes. As a result, halfway through the war, Drius, with the alliance of his leader Swine, launched a coup and sent the tyrant to the gallows. Lacus sat down and looked at Lynn, whose face was somewhat pale, and asked with concern, "Lynn, what's wrong with you?" From just now on, she noticed that Lynn was a bit restless. And this emotion, the girl had never seen it in Lynn before. "It's okay, Lacus. I just suddenly felt a little uncomfortable." Lynn waved his hands, signaling that Lace didn't have to worry. He began to think about how to spread the news of the Burning Legion's invasion in the shortest possible time. Both official channels and tavern gossip are good ways to spread information. Lynn can do both and work together. But the problem is, there's no time left. There are only 3 days left until the Legion invades. How to spread this shocking news throughout the entire continent of Valoran within 3 days. And, even worse, in the entire Rune Continent, besides Lynn himself, who knows what kind of terrifying presence the Burning Legion is. Those who receive warnings may only think that this is an apocalyptic prophecy used by cultists to create panic, right? Ha! Lynn lifted his head and suddenly noticed that there were 2 other people sitting next to Drouse. Their broad black cloaks almost covered their entire bodies, and their eyes could be vaguely seen. Are they the other 2 members of the Trefali Council? Lynn guessed. Since the downfall of Dakville, a new order has emerged in Texas, giving rise to the Trefali Council. Its leaders are Drius, who represents force, Swain, who represents foresight, and the mysterious, faceless man, who represents cunning. Is it possible that the three giants gathered at the border fortress of Valdis, as Galen said, with some conspiracy? Lynn's mind became increasingly puzzled, but at least it proved that the current peace talks would never be ordinary. There's something fishy about it. Very well, then please, General of Texas, explain to me what exactly is going on with this monster. On the other side, Galen pointed to the corpse of the hellhound on the table, his anger lingering. And the stone giant monster Lynn encountered before, don't tell me, you don't know anything. I just received the news that you have encountered monsters. Delia stood up and shrugged, saying. Although I don't want to say that, to be honest, we really don't know. Don't worry, I'm deceiving you. Noxus has always been brave and daring. Covering up is not the style of Norse people. Calm down, brother. Let's listen to what they say first. Noticing a slight stalemate in the atmosphere, Lacus tugged at the sleeve under Galen's armor and softly said, let's sit down first. Upon hearing his sister's words, Galen reluctantly glared at his old rival and sat down. Drius also sat down again and glanced with interest at the body on the table. Master Ritz, is this what you call the void monster? The voice of a middle-aged man shattered the awkward atmosphere in the hall, and under Lynn's gaze, the two people next to Drius took off their cloaks. The first thing Lynn noticed was one of them with a huge blue bald head. Under the reflection of the light head refracts a thick purple color. He carried a bundle of huge scrolls on his back, wearing ordinary cloth clothes, and his exposed blue skin was engraved with runes. The second person is dressed in a civilian attire, wearing a black jacket with a high-tied collar and light gray pants and short boots. The right hand naturally hangs down and the left hand is hidden behind. It is the commander of Nox, Swine. It seems that I guessed half right. Zhaoshuyuan.com Lynn stared at the scroll behind Ruiz, and could feel the enormous arcane energy emanating from the scroll from a distance. The Ruiz in front of him is even stronger than he had guessed before, and his strength may have surpassed the hero level, even surpassing ordinary demigods. Valoran is not as weak as imagined, but unfortunately, facing the Legion, he is still far behind. Lynn couldn't help but sigh in his heart. In the boundless universe, the Burning Legion launched a massive expedition, successfully destroying countless worlds. So far, only the distant continent of Azeroth has successfully defeated the Legion. The cost is the division of the entire continent, the fall of many ancient demigods, and countless fresh lives. With Valoran's current strength, he is somewhat powerless against great demons like Archimonde the Destroyer and Kil'jaeden the Scammer. Even the next level of Destroyer, Manolos and Overlord, Kazak, Valoran will be overwhelmed by the endless demons of the Legion. If the team is led by the fallen Titan Sargeras, the creator of the Legion, then Lynn can only give up resistance and seize the time to enjoy this last moment. Don't stare at it, young man. Feeling Lynn's gaze, Ritz warned, some powers are better not to know. Then, Ritz stood up, reached out his right hand, and rested it on the back of the hellhound. In Lynn's eyes, a faint eerie purple light bloomed where the two met. No, it's not the power of the void. After a while, Ritz withdrew his hand, his face serious, and said, but I can feel the same violence and destruction from it. Everyone, we are going to have trouble. What a big trouble. Chapter 5. 6 The Great Force. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Originally, I came to warn you of the news of the coming void. But now, I'm afraid there's another piece of bad news. The demons are also coming to Valoran. Ruiz spent his whole life searching for world runes. Fragments left by Valoran's native magic, representing powerful power. After finding these mysterious characters, Ruiz will carefully embed them in the scroll behind or find a place to hide them to avoid being coveted by others. Thanks to these runes, Ruiz grew from an ordinary mage to a demigod, and even his life was greatly extended as a result. Anyone would gladly accept this powerful power. But for Liz, it was more like a curse, forcing him to take on this sacred duty. Over the past year, the old wizard has been wandering around every corner of the Rune Land. From the ice and snow-covered Frirdrod to the scorching sun-scorching Shrima Desert, wherever there are cracks in the void, his figure will appear. The conclusion drawn, however, made the old wizard tremble with fear. The energy fluctuations generated by these cracks were far more than ever before. Even during the Rune Wars, when the magic waves of Valoran were at their strongest, such scenes never occurred. Ruiz had to face the reality that the void was about to invade. The old wizard decided to issue a warning to various countries in Valoran. However, this was only the first stop, and Ritz received even more astonishing news. Devil. Galen hadn't spoken yet, but instead Lacus was surprised and asked, didn't it mean that the demons were completely eliminated during the Rune War? Valoran has always had legends about demons. They were born at the beginning of the world, feeding on negative human emotions. Greed, desire, fear. It is these demons who have provoked countless wars on this continent. It was not until the end of the Rune Wars, when angels appeared, that they were all annihilated. This period of history has always been recorded in the history books of Demacia. Little girl, the story you heard may have some deviation. Faced with Lacus's question, Ritz shook his head and replied. The appearance of that angel only repelled these demons. Demons have existed since the emergence of humans, and their lives are connected to Valoran. Unless one day the Rune Land collapses, they will never be eradicated. Moreover, the demon I just mentioned does not belong to our world. They belong to the deeper part of the universe. Master Ritz, can you explain more clearly what it means to be a demon that does not belong to our world? Ruiz's words made Galen feel a bit foggy. For almost all Valoran people, the range they come into contact with throughout their lives is just the continent beneath their feet, and the universe is too distant and difficult to understand. I'm not very clear either. Ruiz frowned and said. I once saw a sentence in an ancient classic. There are more demons outside of our world. When they appear, it means that the world we are in has been discovered. The enemy will send a large army to invade and completely destroy our world. So, be sure to stay away from those ancient taboo magic. It will bring disaster to the Rune Land. Before today, I thought the classics referred to void creatures. But it wasn't until I saw this corpse that I realized that the demon mentioned in the book was a different kind of existence. There are too many mysteries in the universe. It's the Burning Legion. After Ruiz finished speaking, Lynn couldn't help but speak up. Because the system issued another warning to him, this time the content was even more terrifying than the one not long ago. Warning. Void creatures will officially invade in 3 days. The host planet has insufficient carrying capacity to withstand the collision between evil energy and the void. The planet will collapse in 30 days, please prepare for the escape as soon as possible. The original task of the host is cleared, and all unused rewards will be automatically exchanged for Dark Gate drawing. If Lynn had a hint of the idea of gathering all Valoran heroes to fight against the Burning Legion together, before. Now, Lynn only has one thought in his heart. Escape. The faster you escape, the better. After all, even the planet we live on is about to be destroyed. Even if we win the Legion, what's the point? The Burning Legion. Everyone's gaze converged on Lynn. Lynn spread out his right hand and with a thought, a light ball the size of an egg appeared in his palm, illuminating the entire dimly lit room. Galen first widened his eyes, his right hand trembling slightly. Ruiz touched his chin, feeling lost in thought. Delius and Lacus remained curious, staring at the ball of light in Lynn's hand. Lynn looked at Galen, whose expression had changed greatly, and his reaction to Galen was not surprising. In Demacia, he had never actively used the power of the Holy Light, except for that time at Forsborough. He also attempted to use the Forbidden Stone to imprison the Holy Light, but found that the Forbidden Stone did not cause any interference with the Holy Light. This also proves that the theory of the 6 forces is equally applicable in Valoran. Therefore, now he will expose the power of the holy light. Galen, actually you've been suspecting me that I'm a wizard, right? Galen did not answer, but his slightly dilated pupils betrayed his inner self. The pioneers of Demacia were all ordinary people who suffered from the persecution of rune wars. These ordinary people without magical talent later gathered under the Forbidden Forest and worked together to establish the country of Demacia. Demacia's hatred towards magic has continued from ancient times to the present day. They inherited all the hatred of magical persecution from their ancestors in this world, and each generation witnessed the terror and cruelty of magic. Over time, the Demacians began to hate magic. I am not a magician, and I have not deceived you. As early as the first time we met, I told you that my profession is Paladin, full name, Holy Light Knight. As you can see, the power I use at zhaoshuyuan.com is called the Holy Light Power. Lynn's gaze turned to Lacus and continued, Lacus, do you remember what you told me about the Angel of Mean City? The divine power she uses is the power of the Holy Light. Holy Light and arcane magic are like stones and lizard eggs, seemingly identical but actually completely different things. Let me start from scratch. Lynn sorted out the memories in his mind and slowly said, as long as the universe existed before the emergence of life, even before the universe had formed, there was light and emptiness. When light and the void began to collide, it ultimately triggered a series of catastrophic explosions, breaking the structure of all things and creating a new realm, which is the material universe we live in. Countless primitive worlds were born here. Lynn was like filling a duck, filling everyone with memories in his mind. Thus, the power of light, chaos, death, emptiness, order, and life were born. Under their interweaving and collision, countless lives were born. Among them, the most unstable energy accumulates into an interstellar plane, which is the distorted void. That is the place where demons are born, and also the place where demons die and can truly be killed. The void creatures mentioned by Master Ritz had already appeared since the birth of the universe. The only goal of these dark spirits is to distort reality into an eternal purgatory. For this, they devoured and distorted one world after another. These creatures are particularly skilled at manipulating the human heart. By understanding human desires, greed, and fear, they subtly influence human will, making targets willing to become sacrificial chess pieces. Chapter 6. Cowardly actions, I will never tolerate them. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Galen opened his mouth wide, but he didn't know what to say. He stood up, sat down, stood up again, repeated several times, completely bewildered. He knew the knight in front of him and had been hiding some secret. But he didn't expect that this secret was completely beyond his imagination. If it were not Lynn who said these words, but anyone else, Galen would definitely think that this guy has committed some hysteria and forked him out as a lunatic. Lynn, how did you know? Compared to her brother, Lace's performance was much calmer, thanks to her trust in knights. The trust to entrust her life. Since obtaining this inheritance of the holy light, I have also gained this memory. The 6 great forces, void, and evil energy are all hidden in this memory. Lynn cannot explain the existence of time travel and systems, and can only reluctantly explain it in this way. What's going on with the Burning Legion? Drouse, sitting across from him, asked, frowning as if his head was covered in a puddle. That is a massive and endless army composed of demons and corrupt races. Their goal is to destroy all life in response to the erosion of the universe by void creatures. The Dark Titan Sargeras led the demon army and launched a burning expedition, destroying countless worlds. As mentioned by Master Ritz in ancient texts. Their next goal is the world of Valoran where we live. The demon dog on the table is proof. That is to say, our planet is being targeted by both forces at the same time, and both are forces that existed since the birth of the universe. Ruiz coughed lightly, moistened his throat, and said slightly dryly. Lynn's statement is really hard to imagine. From Master Ruiz's current expression, it seems that he also agrees with everything Lynn said. While the strength level of the Valoran people was still looking up at the stars, surprisingly, a demon had already organized a cross-planet war. This is simply unbelievable. The two major forces will invade a planet together, and this heavy pressure makes everyone speechless. For a long time, Galen seemed to have discovered something and suddenly asked Lynn, "Are you saying that the Burning Legion's expedition was to deal with the corrosion of void creatures? So, is it possible to join forces with the Burning Legion and fight against the void creatures together? Alternatively, we can hide first and wait for them to fight before we can reap the benefits." Lynn shook his head and was about to pour cold water when Swain had already spoken. "Have you ever seen two lions fighting and forming an alliance with ants? Not to mention, their goal is our planet. In their eyes, we are probably even smaller than ants originally." Upon hearing Galen's words, Ruiz was still contemplating new tactics. After Swine finished speaking, his excited heart was suddenly drenched with a chill. "The strength of one of them is enough to crush us. Whether it is the Legion or the Void, they are the mortal enemies of life. The only way to reconcile with them is to become a complete member of them. If that's the case, do we still have the significance of resisting?" After Swine finished speaking, Lynn spoke again. "He must break everyone's illusions in order to propose the method of crossing the Dark Gate. So there's nothing we can do about it." Lacus spoke up and said, "If the Burning Legion and the Void Force are really as powerful as you said, aren't we just waiting to die obediently?" Lex's words caught the attention of the people present, and everyone's gaze turned towards Lynn. "There's only one way." Lynn raised a hand and said with a heavy tone. "Leaving the continent where we live, crossing the gates of darkness, heading to a place called Azeroth. That is the only place where the Burning Legion's expedition failed, and it is also the only place where there is a chance to defeat the Void. Only there can Valoran's life have a chance to continue. Continuing to stay in Valoran is just a dead end." The atmosphere in the room once again became heavy, and everyone looked at each other. After a long time, Delius finally stood up first, clenched his right hand into a fist, and smashed the table hard. He spoke loudly, "No, I wouldn't choose to retreat and flee to a place I haven't even heard of before the war starts. I will not tolerate cowardly actions." After speaking, Delius walked out of the room without looking back. "This is really..." Galen didn't know what to say for a moment, so he shook his head and said, "I'll go back and report to your Majesty first. This is too exaggerated. Compared to the news he received today, the original mission is no longer worth mentioning. He must immediately return to Demacia and inform King Gavin III of everything that has happened." Lynn also stood up, ready to follow behind Galen, but noticed that Swine gave him a glance. Zhaoshuyuan.com. He looked at Lacus and whispered, "Lacus, you can go back with Galen to tidy up first." "I'll go back right away." Lacus nodded repeatedly, approached Lynn, and whispered, "Be careful," before following Galen away. "I will inform other countries of this news as soon as possible, and you also need to prepare in advance." Ruiz looked at Lynn and Swine, and with a swipe of his right hand in the air, a portal appeared. Ruiz glanced at Lynn again and stepped into the portal. Watching Ruiz disappear from the portal, Lynn envied him and thought to himself, "It seems like choosing a mage back then was pretty good, at least it would be much easier to travel." Of course, Lynn was just thinking about it. "If I had chosen to become a mage as my profession, I'm afraid I would have encountered a different situation. I'm afraid on the first day he arrives at Demacia, he will be caught and expelled by the demon hunters, not to mention establishing such a close relationship with Lacus. Is there anything else, Commander Sven?" When there were only two people left in the hall, Lynn took 2 steps closer and asked. Although there was a festival in Praxition, to be precise, he and Arya worked together to cut off one of the arms of the Grand Commander. But Lynn knew that with Swine's strategy, he wouldn't fail to see that both the Norxans and Demacians were grasshoppers on a rope. "I see your hesitant expression just now, it seems like there's something else you haven't said." In front of Lynn, Swine extended his left hand. That was a red demon hand, and Lynn could see soul fragments dancing faintly within it. Since yesterday, it has been restless and restless. Chapter 7, Please Call Me Councilor Tallis. You are listening at novelfull.audio. From an ordinary veteran to the leader of a country, Swine's experience has always been a legend in Nox, where the capable reside. No one knows what he went through, except for himself. In the Battle of Placid, he lost one of his arms, but at the same time, he gained something more important. Strength. With the help of this power, he finally saw through the darkness hidden deep in Nox. Dackville and the Black Rose behind him were like two giant leeches, lying on the weak body of Nox, constantly sucking blood. After spending 3 years, Swine finally cleared all the remaining forces of Dackville. His next goal is to uproot the Black Rose by its roots. Unfortunately, reality always comes faster than plan, and in recent times, his demonic arm has become increasingly restless. What he sees is becoming increasingly chaotic. These things constantly torment him, making it impossible for him to handle the affairs of Texas with peace of mind. When Ruiz arrived at the Immortal Fortress and issued a warning to Swain, Swain had a premonition in his heart. The reason for the abnormal arm was definitely related to this warning. Taking a complex glance at Lynn, Swain's heart flashed with a hint of disgust. This disgust was entirely instinctive rather than willful, just like bats naturally dislike light. Swain understood that this was the demon lurking within him. It was influencing him unconsciously. The power of demons has always come at a cost. This world is about to be destroyed. Lynn stared into Swain's eyes, wanting to see the leader's reaction. To Lynn's surprise, Swine calmly exaggerated a bit. He asked lightly, "Is it because of the Burning Legion and Void creatures?" "Well, that's about it. Due to the powerful destructive power of the Void and evil energy, their struggle will tear apart the entire planet," Lynn replied. The hall once again fell silent. When Lynn waited for a long time, ready to turn around and leave, the silent leader finally spoke. "What exactly is the Dark Gate you mentioned?" "A magical portal, but its effect far exceeds that of a regular portal." "Is it reliable?" "Absolutely reliable, because there used to be a large number of creatures who really reached Azeroth through the Dark Portal," Lynn said without hesitation. "Orcs, ogres. These non-Azeroth native creatures, are they not the ones who arrived at Azeroth through the Dark Portal? How was it built?" Upon hearing the question, Lynn reached out and took out a piece of parchment from the jacket on his chest, emitting a strong sense of antiquity. He handed it over and said, "This is the construction blueprint." Swain took the blueprint, glanced roughly, and placed it on the table. "I will try my best to mobilize craftsmen to start construction, but the amount of work involved is indeed huge. If you want to complete it as soon as possible, relying solely on the craftsmen of Texas is far from enough." "Is there any concrete evidence that the world you said will be destroyed?" Lynn nodded and said, "I will provide evidence." "Then hurry up." Swain retracted his left hand behind his back and waved his sleeve with his right hand. "Time waits for no one." Lynn walked out of the hall, approached a stone pier, and slowly sat down. His hand once again reached into the sandwich pocket on his chest and took out something pressed under the blueprint of the Dark Gate. It was a delicate cloth doll. Looking at the doll lying quietly in the palm of his hand, a figure surged in Lynn's heart. That is a girl wearing a princess skirt, her curly bright blue long hair reaching straight to the hem of the princess skirt, and under her is a pair of gray and white long socks. Her face is always filled with an optimistic smile, the corners of her mouth are slightly raised, and she is holding a large pair of scissors in her hand. When Lynn faced Fuego's sword in the black mist, unable to avoid it, the girl raised her scissors and resolutely stood in front of him. "I will never let you be hurt." Lynn still remembered the girl's words, and in the end, the scissors were cut off and the girl's figure disappeared. Only the doll in Lynn's hand is left in place. "Miss Gwen, I will find a way to bring you back to life." Lynn secretly swore, "I can't do anything in Valoran, but when I get to Azeroth, I will definitely find it. Looking up at the still dim sky, Lynn cast his gaze westward. We must hurry, time waits for no one. 2 days later, Lynn stood in front of a villa in Piltworth, full of thoughts. A dark yellow metal roof, a pitch-black iron door, and purple exterior walls with faint traces of paint. Everything in front of me is not much different from the house in my memory. 3 years ago, Lynn's first foothold in Pi City was here. Now that Lynn is revisiting his hometown, familiar faces flash through his mind one after another. The capable and steady Uncle Fandel, the young and mature Ike, the kind-hearted cool girl Zelie, the quirky Jinx. Hey, isn't this a Zuan smuggler? Good kid, you're hiding here. No wonder the law enforcement officers in Piching can't find you. Hurry up and surrender, accept a fair trial. A magnetic voice echoed from behind Lynn. Turning around, there was a man with a tense face and a forced serious demeanor. Seeing the appearance of the newcomer, Lynn couldn't help but retort. Yo-yo, isn't this the famous Pai Ching Gao Fu Shui Jia Si? I haven't seen you in a few years, why is it like this? At this moment, Jess's hair was disheveled, and his originally clean white shirt was covered in dust. Even worse, the originally slender black pants had a big crack opening from the calf. From a distance, it looks like a refugee who has just illegally crossed from the Zuan sewer to Piching, and the title of Piching Gao Fu Shui does not match it at all. Humph, please call me Councilor Tallis. Jess punched Lynn on the shoulder and expressed strong dissatisfaction with Lynn's teasing on Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com. Then, both of them laughed together. After leaving Ionia, Lynn stayed in Zwan for over a year and met the first Mrs. Pirtu, who was Jess. From the initial smuggling business to the later reshaping of the order in Piching and Zuan, the two were also close comrades who fought side by side. Is Uncle Fandel okay? Seeing a long-lost friend, a memory couldn't help but surge in my heart, and Lynn instinctively asked. Well, it's really leisurely all day. He had to manage your football league on your behalf before. Last month, I simply waved my hand and handed all these things over to your two little followers, Ike and Zelie. Jess said enviously, if you ask me, this is the life that legislators should live. What you said is wrong. The greater the ability, the greater the responsibility. Lynn reached out and patted the dust off Jess's shoulder, comforting him. You are the Lord of Piching. What's so enviable about Zuan Mouse's life? Alright, when it comes to the strange energy of yin and yang, no one dares to say first when you call it second. Sooner or later, you will be ruined by your broken mouth. After so long, Jess still couldn't get used to Lynn's jumping mind, waved his hands repeatedly, and then asked as if he remembered something. No, aren't you here to see them? No, I'm here to see you, Lynn said. Me. Jess reached out and pointed at himself, puzzled, what do you see me doing? I need you to complete a project, a very important one. Lynn said deeply, this concerns the lives of countless people. Chapter 8. How can we manage Demasia well when we start with such insects? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Galen stood behind Aunt Tiana, expressionless. The constant sound of aristocratic arguments in his ears made him restless. Since bringing the news he received from Valdis back to Demacia, the entire palace has become a mess. The nobles argue here all day long, treating the palace like a vegetable market. The topics they argued about were diverse, but the focus was always on one thing. The invasion of the Void and the Burning Legion was a lie, and King Gavin III must remain steadfast in Demacia. As a member of the aristocracy, Galen could understand their thoughts. The achievements of their ancestors allowed them to lie on the merit book and be superior, and the hereditary land ensured that the nobles had no worries about their food and clothing. The combination of the two has created these corrupt and arrogant beings. Their greatest role in Demacia is to give luxury goods from Pi City a place to belong. To be fair, if it weren't for these people's excessive behavior, Galen wouldn't have been so annoyed with them. But these corpses, who are vegetarian, not only fail to provide any useful advice, but also constantly question the news brought by Galen. Inside and outside, it is implying that there is some kind of shady transaction between Galen and Nox. The purpose of their existence is entirely to delay progress, and Galen increasingly feels the correctness of Lynn's statement. How can you manage Demasia well with such insects? That's enough. On the throne, Emperor Jowan III put an end to the debates among the nobles. He rubbed his forehead, where there were several deep wrinkles due to long-term fatigue. As a king, he naturally knows more than the nobles in front of him. Galen concealed some things from the nobles, but he did not conceal his own king. Everything that happened in the city of Valdis was reported to the ruler of Demacia by Galen, who was originally local. One of the people's names caught the king's attention. Liz. In the secret records of the Light Shield family, many of the founders of Demacia were sheltered by this old wizard. He was a legendary figure. After briefly marveling at the longevity of the old wizard, Emperor Jowan III paid more attention to the void mentioned by the old wizard. That terrifying existence is also recorded in even more distant history. It is said that in the distant city of Frederick, there are still monitors hiding in the abyss, observing everything that happens in Valoran. Another person who caught the attention of Emperor Jowan III was Lynn, a royal advisor who had only emerged in the past 2 years. Based on Lynn's achievements in Demacia, King Gavin III's plan was to grant him the title of Baron in exchange for better service to Demacia. Now it seems that he is stingy. The power of the holy light mentioned by young people reminded King Gavin III of the 2 winged angels who had left Demacia hundreds of years ago. According to Galen's description, the power Lynn possesses is almost identical to the power bestowed upon militia weapons by the Winged Guardian as recorded. Perhaps he is another angel. Or is it the offspring of a certain angel? Jowan III speculated. Most of the nobles in the palace were unaware of all this, and the king naturally had no intention of telling them the information that Galen had concealed. This is also a helpless move. With Demacia's attitude towards the mage, recklessly revealing everything and using it to prove the seriousness of the matter will inevitably backfire. They don't know or care about the difference between mages and users of the holy light. The peace treaty with Texas has forced this king to bear a lot of pressure. Emperor Jowan III did not want any further setbacks at this critical moment. That's all for today's discussion. Emperor Jowan III stood up from the throne, declared the end of the pre-trial meeting, and then ordered. Tiana, Bouville, Fiona, Durant, and Galen stayed behind. Upon hearing His Majesty the King's order, the nobles bowed and walked out of the palace one by one. They were not surprised by the order issued by the king. Obviously, the king had something important to discuss with these 4 major families. Please have a seat. The guards added 4 more chairs in front of the hall, and the 4 noble family heads sat down in order. If Demacia and the Shield of Light are a solid house, then Crown Guard, Laurent, Bouville, and Durant are the pillars that support this house. No matter what decision Emperor Jowan III makes, he must communicate with these 4 major families to ensure that there will be no significant obstacles in the execution process. Emperor Jowan III returned to the throne and glanced at Galen, who was still standing behind Tiana, and ordered. Galen, recount everything that happened in Valdis City in its entirety. There's no need to hide anything this time. Yes, Your Majesty. So Galen recounted everything he had seen and heard from entering Valdis City to leaving. This includes encountering demonic creatures, Ritz's warning, the holy light mentioned by Lynn, the 6 forces, the Burning Legion, and the Void Force. Galen concluded that there was a great trust in the night hidden in his words. Although it may sound unbelievable, Lynn definitely won't just talk nonsense. For a while after Galen finished speaking, the palace remained extremely quiet. For a long time, Tiana spoke up and said, Your Majesty, since that knight and Master Ritz have issued warnings at the same time, I think we should approach them with caution. Galen looked at Aunt Tiana in surprise. He didn't expect that this relative who had never treated Lynn well would have a sharp turn in attitude. What's wrong with Aunt today? Tiana certainly doesn't know what her nephew is thinking. In fact, at the first glance she saw Lynn on zhaoshuyuan.com, she was wary of this mysterious knight. Behind the scenes, Tiana had been paying attention to Lynn, of course, due to the devastating defeat of Nox in Ionia. She also discovered that Lynn's first appearance was in the jungle of Ishtar, when he was just an ordinary person. In just 1 year, he shone brightly on the battlefield of Ionia and was awarded the title of Radiant Knight. Later on, he went to Piltworth. To Shrima, the more things Lynn does, the more dangerous it becomes in Tiana's eyes. Combined with the suspected magical marks on his body, Tiana became even more hesitant to let her guard down. This young man is highly likely a pawn cultivated by a mysterious force, attempting to stir up a new crisis in Valoran. Because the swordsman discovered that she couldn't find any information about Lynn before the appearance of Ishtar. He seems to have appeared in this world out of thin air. During the time when Lynn arrived at Demacia, Tiana was like a formidable enemy, so nervous that her husband Aldrich complained. She still remembers that the commander of the Search Demon Army said this. Tiana, don't be too arrogant. I have come into contact with many sinners and witnessed their true faces under the mask of grandeur. They can use a warm smile on one side and dig out people as materials for casting evil magic. But this young man is completely different. I can feel the passion in his heart. There are too many things in this world that we cannot understand, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Think of the angel sisters who appeared in Demacia. Aren't they just the embodiment of justice? Chapter 9. The Four Nobles of Demacia. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As soon as Tiana finished speaking, Durang, who was sitting next to her, stood up and spoke. Your Majesty, I don't think Demacia needs to worry too much. Our ancestors chose this place as a sanctuary precisely because of the Forbidden Stone. Even the most powerful magic will be blocked by the walls cast with forbidden magic stones. And when the monsters lose the magic they rely on for survival, they will inevitably lose their own strength and become weak. At that time, I don't think they will be a match for the Dreadnought Legion at all. The Durang family has been legendary craftsmen for generations. From the Durance Hammer, in the hands of Oren, the founder of Demacia, to the Dragon Lance, in the hands of Prince Gavin IV, all of them are from the Durant family. After generations of operation by the Durant family, the hilly town of Pings in southern Demacia has become the largest weapons factory in Valoran. Every day, hundreds or even thousands of sophisticated weapons are transported from the town to various parts of the mainland. From divine weapons in the hands of generals to standard weapons used by soldiers. Most of the equipment produced by Demacia is closely related to the Durant family. Without a doubt, the Durant family is a staunch conservative. Losing Ping's town will inevitably damage the vitality of the Durang family. I don't think so. The head of the Bouvet family, who is almost 70 years old, spoke up. He stood up and dragged his broad white robe all the way to the ground. What if the Forbidden Stone doesn't work on them? By that time, wouldn't Demacia have missed the best opportunity to escape? How many innocent people will be harmed by then compared to the talented Crown Guard family? Bouvier is better at discovering talent among the common people. For example, the adopted Demacian top-string player Sana and the sponsored Dragon Eagle team captain Quinn. This may also be related to the positioning of the Bouvet family. The Bouvet family, in charge of Demacia's only secret mage army. The Illuminators. Demacia was built by a group of ordinary people without magic, but this does not mean that every generation of Demacia people is a magical idiot. In Demacia, there are still a considerable number of people who are born with a natural talent for magic. For these people, even if they hate magic, even the king cannot sentence them to death. This goes against the law of Demacia. So, the search for demons emerged. The task of the demon hunters is to discover, shelter, and absorb people with magical talents among ordinary people. Magic itself is not scary, what's scary is its owner. In the eyes of the founder of the Search for Demons and the enlightened Emperor Jiawen II, magic is also a tool. Even if they hate magic, Demasians still need to understand it. Only in this way can we find a way to restrain it. Illuminators are outstanding individuals selected from the Search for Demons, who hide in the dark and serve Demasia's secret business. Due to generations of contact with civilians, the Bouvet family is also able to empathize more with them. If the theory of the six forces is true, then the effect of the Forbidden Stone may not be very good. The elder looked at Du Lang, who was quite selfish, and said earnestly, "Don't forget, the Forbidden Stone only has special effects on magic. And magic belongs only to one of the six major forces. We are about to invade the continent of Valoran, but the forces of evil energy and the void, so what? Even if the Forbidden Stone doesn't work, the Gario statue can still repel all incoming enemies." Du Lang, who was refuted, retorted sharply, "I don't believe that by uniting the power of all the Valorans, we cannot drive the enemy out of this land. Gario is a giant stone statue standing outside the capital of Demacia. It is an anti-magic weapon created by the Durant family over decades and using countless precious treasures, making it the greatest masterpiece in the history of the Durant family. When powerful magical powers appear around Gario, it will be activated. Then the giant statue will absorb the enemy's magic for its own use, constantly fighting until the magic power is exhausted. But what about the cost? How much life will Demacia have to sacrifice? How much life does Valoran have to sacrifice? When the enemy is too strong, escaping is not shameful." Bouvier shouted loudly, his beard trembling with excitement. "No, this is Demacia, the home of all Demasians. I absolutely do not want to evacuate." Du Lang also became angry. People can evacuate, but how can the countless equipment in Ping's town be moved? Without Ping's town, the Durang family will completely degenerate into a second or even third-class aristocratic status, which Durang cannot tolerate. Emperor Jiawen III frowned slightly as he looked at the two people who were caught in an argument. As the king and head of the Light Shield family, he had much more to consider than the nobles. Demacia must not be destroyed. If the enemy's power is too strong, fleeing is indeed a good choice. But can the Demasians survive in another world? Emperor Jiawen III absolutely did not want anyone to encroach on his land. Similarly, people from another world would not be willing to cede a piece of territory to Demacia. This is the will of all citizens of the country, and has nothing to do with personal likes and dislikes. However, the enemy is the Burning Legion, a legendary demon who destroys countless worlds. In addition, as mentioned by Master Ritz, the Guardian, the Void Monster. Zhaoshuyuan.com. This is not a simple addition and subtraction game. Once Demacia loses one of the wars, she will fall into an irreversible fate. The king gently rubbed his temples, remembering that there was still a family that had not spoken. So he looked at the youngest homeowner in the entire palace and asked, "Fiona, what do you think?" Upon hearing the question from Emperor Jiawen III, the silent girl stood up, her short hair burning with enthusiasm, and she spoke loudly. "No matter how your majesty chooses, the Loran family has always been Demacia's sword. The long sword in Loran's hand will pierce into the chest of all enemies." After an engagement scandal that almost destroyed the family, Fiona took control of the family from her father. Nowadays, the reputation of the Loran family has plummeted, and Fiona has to hide her time and recruit talented people while downplaying her own existence and doing her best to restore the family's reputation. Whether facing war or exploring new worlds, Fiona has the confidence to regain the honor belonging to the Loran family through the stabbing sword in her hand. Emperor Jiawen III fell into a long period of contemplation, and after a long time, he finally said, "Order Prince Jiawen IV to be the commander of the Dreadnought Legion, leading the Dreadnought Legion to explore the city of Valdis first." "Your Majesty." A guard dressed in light armor quickly approached Emperor Jiawen III and interrupted his command. The most trusted warrior of the royal family glanced at the nobles present and loudly said. Urgent reports from Dovhold and Tobia. Countless monsters suddenly appeared from all directions and began attacking nearby villages. The number of local guards is seriously insufficient and urgently needs support. Chapter 10. Battle, Cool. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. When Lynn returned from Pi City to Valdez City again, everything in front of him had already changed. In order to cope with the descending hellfire from the sky, all the roofs of the buildings in the city have been lifted off. With the city as the center, countless tents of all sizes are stationed around, and the blue and red flags in the tent group are particularly prominent. Occasionally, a hellfire falls in the distance, and in an instant, an officer leads a team of soldiers to surround the hellfire. Bomb! A huge sound came from afar, and the entire ground trembled with it. Then, a deafening sound sounded from afar. Battle, it's great. Accompanied by a huge roar, the screams of the hellhound were incessant, followed by the cheers of the Nox's soldiers. It sounds like the army of Texas has gained a significant advantage. In the eyes of the soldiers, as long as they ensure repeated victories like this, these invading demons will eventually be driven out. Taking a glance at the wounded soldiers peeking out from the nearby tent to hear cheers, Lynn couldn't help but frown. The injured soldiers were injured in different places, mostly in the legs and waist. Obviously, the hellhounds have caused them a lot of suffering. Some unlucky guys may have been hit hard by the hellfire, with their entire arms weakly hanging around their necks. Lynn's heart is heavy. If these soldiers knew that no matter how hard they resisted, they would have to leave their hometowns for another place, they would probably fall into confusion and despair. After smoothing his somewhat disheveled hair, Lynn quickly walked towards the town center of Valdez. He has prepared the evidence. Soldiers patrolling were everywhere in Valdez, and upon seeing the seal in Lynn's hand and the iconic sword behind him, the soldiers quickly pointed Lynn in the direction. The generals of Demacia and Commander Sven are all there. A sergeant pointed to the only house in the city whose roof had not been demolished. Following the officer's instructions, Lynn quickly found the place he was looking for. Surprisingly, this house was not heavily guarded, with soldiers scattered around in small groups. Standing guard at the gate is a short Yodelian officer wearing a military cap. Next to him was a newly grown dragon lizard, but its condition was clearly not good. The dragon lizard shrunk its head listlessly and lay lazily on the ground. The Yodel people are one of the oldest races in the Rune Land, with the oldest civilization in the entire Valoran region. They are only about 1 meter tall and are wrapped in a dense fluff, with long hair on their faces for males and blue or purple skin for females. The adventurous nature of the Yodels allowed their presence to spread throughout the entire Rune Continent, and one of the most violent Yodels chose to join the army of Noxus. Cigar, I've said it many times, don't bite everything in your mouth. Because he was blinded in one eye during the war, this Yodelian's personality became even more irritable. He glared at the dragon lizard with a left eye, hating it for not being strong enough. I have already planned to participate in tonight's battle, chopping off his 40 or 50 heads, but it's all ruined because of you. The dragon lizard let out a cry, apparently in response to its owner's scolding. Upon hearing the dragon lizard's answer, Kree became even more angry and his voice became sharp. What does it mean you're hungry? I only fed you this morning, you said you were hungry again. Can those things be eaten? Didn't you smell the stench on them? I see you're just scared and want to escape in the face of danger. You coward. Shut up, you coward, shut up. If you dare to leave me like last time, you won't come back again. Never, never come back again. Even without you, I could have turned the other side upside down by myself. Klee angrily stepped on the dragon lizard. When he was about to give her another try, he noticed Lynn standing in front of him. Hurry up and go ahead. Chong Lin impatiently waved his hand, and Kree's attention returned to Cigar. They've been waiting for you for a long time, he said stepping into the room, a solemn atmosphere swept over Lynn, and the first thing he heard was the voice of King Gavin IV. The losses of the Dreadnought Legion have exceeded 30%, and this is only the second day of demon invasion. If we continue like this, we will soon be overwhelmed by endless demons. The prince's voice became hoarse due to days of fighting. Swain, if you have any trumps in Texas, get them out quickly. Calm down, Jowan IV, your patience is much worse than your father. The war machine of Texas, Sean, has already been deployed, we won't lose it, Swine said calmly and slowly. If he had seen Jowan IV like this before the invasion of demons, he would definitely have been pleased by the instability of this air. Calm down. How could you make me calm down? More than 200 soldiers of the Fearless Legion have already sacrificed themselves in the battle against demons. And I can't do anything. These damn demons. Did the Noxes not sacrifice themselves? Chui Feilai has lost more than half of his elite soldiers. Their deaths are meant to keep more people alive. Don't you understand, young prince? Swain loudly advised, trying to calm down the excited prince. To be honest, the demon's attack intensity completely exceeded his expectations. In order to boost morale, Swine had to deploy Norse's secret weapon. Sean. This is a giant created by the previous king using alchemy. Its prototype is the warrior who killed King Jowan I hundreds of years ago. It is ironic that the weapons originally used to deal with Demacia are now protecting the Demacians. Where else can we go? Emperor Jowan IV covered his face and lost his composure for the first time in his life. Even when he was captured by the Noxes 2 years ago, he never felt so desperate. Upon hearing this, Lynn strode into the conference room with a resounding and powerful voice. Go to Azeroth, your highness. Even demons will encounter failure there. Moreover, there is everywhere unowned land, there is enough space for the Demacians to live on, but... Seeing what else Emperor Jowan IV wanted to say, Lynn threw the document in his hand onto the table and said in a deep voice, Your Highness Jowan, Valoran is about to be destroyed. We can't continue living here anymore. Emperor Jowan IV glanced at the document on the table, and all his attention was immediately drawn to it. The author of The Destruction of Valoran. On the carrying capacity of Valoran's planet is Jess, a renowned Nova scientist from Picheng. In order to keep as many people alive as possible, I suggest changing the Dark Gate to Tea Island. Ignoring King Jowan IV, Lynn looked at Swine and presented the conclusions he had pondered along the way. Tea is a medium-sized island located in the southern part of Texas. From the map, Noxus, Pichenzuan, and Shurima look like a big mouth, and Tea is located at the tip of the tongue. There is the Sea of Watchers all around, and its location happens to be in the center of Valoran. Swain pondered for a moment before nodding with emphasis.